Hey guys, what's going on? I'm sure most of you all watching this video already know of the tragedy that is the PlayStation Classic, but if you for some reason have no idea what I'm talking about, well, simply search on YouTube for PlayStation Classic and you'll come across tons of results bashing the system for various reasons, such as the bland and otherwise confusing game selection, its price, its shitty emulation, which yes, is very ridiculous how they did it, and the insanely basic, uninspired interface that almost looks surprisingly like those handheld Chinese game consoles that have like 101 emulated games on it. There are still people out there that are defending the system, almost as if they're like defending their best friend from a school bully. I don't understand how anyone could defend the PlayStation Classic for being like a great thing and do so unironically. The Classic does a lot of things wrong, and it being the most expensive of the three retro classic consoles makes it all the more confusing. But hey, you know what? If you like the PlayStation Classic and don't see anything wrong with the games or whatever, then all I can say is I'm happy you feel that way. Or something, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, the whole purpose of this video is for me to talk about the games that are included on the PlayStation Classic lineup and discuss, well, what would I have done differently? What games I would have wanted instead of what we got. Alright? So first off, let's take a moment to see the list of the 20 games that were included. The 20 games that Sony, or whoever was calling the shots, felt were classic titles that really needed to be on the PlayStation Classic. Battle Arena Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Destruction Derby, Final Fantasy VII, Grand Theft Auto, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, Metal Gear Solid, Mr. Driller, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, Rayman, Resident Evil Director's Cut, Revelations Persona, Ridge Racer Type 4, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Siphon Filter, Tekken 3, Rainbow Six, Twisted Metal, and finally, Wild Arms. When I saw the list of games that was included, I was, confused to say the least. No Ape Escape, no Spyro the Dragon, not even a Crash Bandicoot? Who, for those who may not know, was the fucking mascot of the PlayStation console, so not having one Crash game is a little bit ridiculous when you think about it. I had a conversation during lunch with a group of coworkers, and we were all talking about the system. Well, one of them mentioned that they probably didn't want to include a Crash Bandicoot or a Spyro game because they just released those remasters on the PS4. I'm sure he's right about that, but come on, that's just stupid. Who cares if they made remasters? The whole point of this PlayStation Classic is to play classic titles for the PlayStation, right? What's more classic than Spyro and Crash? The whole thing just doesn't make any sense. I understand some of it probably has to do with licensing issues, and maybe some of the companies who published the games originally didn't want them on the console for whatever dumb reason, or if they were to put them on the console, they would have charged Sony a weird royalty fee or even possibly a flat fee that was just of a ridiculous amount. I get that in a way, but the system cost $100. Again, it's the most expensive of the three classic consoles. I can't see how this PlayStation Classic could cost more than 10 or 20 bucks to produce just with its hardware alone. The system is made from what I assume is just plastic, and the games are emulated, so how could they not afford to obtain some licenses and deals with a little bit of fees so that they could have a better lineup? How much did it cost to get all these games on the console, you know? Anyway, with that little segment or rant out of the way, let's go ahead and pick and choose which games I would keep versus those games I would completely swap out. Starting with the racing games. There are two of them, Destruction Derby and Ridge Racer 4. I'll just be blunt about this. Neither of these games belong on this console whatsoever. Are they good games? Yeah, sure, whatever. But I don't understand why they were chosen over plenty of other racing games that were not only more popular, but were arguably much, much better. So in this case, I would completely get rid of both games and replace them with Gran Turismo and the original Jet Moto. I do understand that Gran Turismo would probably never happen due to its massive amounts of licensing fees that would probably go into it, but let's just say if licensing wasn't an issue, Gran Turismo has to be on this list. How couldn't it? Then we have the RPG games. We got Wild Arms, Persona, and Final Fantasy VII. I could see why Final Fantasy VII is on this list, even though I personally don't like it as much as 8 or Final Fantasy Tactics, but I wouldn't necessarily replace that game at all. However, I would get rid of Wild Arms and replace that with Parasite Eve, and Persona with Chrono Cross. Chrono Cross is one of my favorite RPG games on that system, and I think it's a much better game than Wild Arms and Persona. At least that's just my opinion. I almost thought about putting Legend of the Dragoon in here over Parasite Eve, but after really thinking about it, I believe people would enjoy Parasite Eve more because I recently played both games again, and unfortunately, Legend of the Dragoon didn't really age all that well compared to Parasite Eve. Next, we have puzzle games. Well, for some bizarre reason, the PlayStation Classic has 3 of them: Mr. Driller, Intelligent Cube, and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. In this case, I would get rid of both Mr. Driller and Intelligent Cube. I wouldn't even replace them with other puzzle games either. Instead, I would bring in Crash Bandicoot and Ape Escape. I mean, hell, both of these titles were very massive back then, and as I've said before, Crash was the PlayStation mascot. So that alone is, you know, kind of a big deal. Ape Escape is another flat-out awesome game, and I'm shocked why that one wasn't even included. I'm a little confused about the addition of Mr. Driller, since at least I don't think it was ever a popular game in the US. I'm sure it was crazy big in Japan, but I've never once heard anyone talk about this game before. Intelligent Cube is actually still a pretty fun game, and it's pretty difficult if I remember correctly, but I wouldn't ever include it on a classic system. Another game I don't understand why it's on this console is Jumping Flash. I'm not even shitting on Jumping Flash. I mean, I absolutely love the game, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, it's just not that amazing, nor would I classify it as a classic for the PlayStation console. Instead, I would trade out both Jumping Flash and Rayman for Tomb Raider, as well as Parappa the Rapper. Rayman is a great game, and I would keep it on this console, but there are so many others that I feel are better than Rayman that didn't get included. I would also trade out Oddworld for Spyro. Oddworld is one of the games that everyone seems to love except for me. I don't even have a good reason for not enjoying it other than it just doesn't do anything for me. But even then, I feel that Spyro should definitely take Oddworld's place in this list. Spyro is one of the best platformer games on the PlayStation console, bar none. So you kinda have to include it. Who gives a shit if they did a remaster on the PS4, which I might add looks amazing, but either way, Spyro has to be on this console. When I saw Rainbow Six listed on this console, my head almost fell off. The PlayStation version of this game is abysmal, just fucking wretched compared to like any other version of this game, so there's no reason to include it on this system. Instead, get rid of it, throw it in a fire, do whatever you gotta do, and bring in Medieval. Medieval is an amazing game, and it definitely deserves a spot on this list. I have no complaints about Twisted Metal being on this list. I would have preferred maybe 3 or 4 since I just like them better, but I'm not complaining. It definitely deserves a spot still on the PlayStation Classic. Speaking of good choices, we have Resident Evil Director's Cut and Siphon Filter. 2 solid choices here. I would have preferred Resident Evil 2, but again, I'm not going to complain, nor would I change out either of these 2 games because they are both great titles for the PlayStation, and they're classics. The only thing though is that Siphon Filter's controls can be kind of wonky at times, especially for those of us who are more accustomed to the now modern controls on our current systems, but you do get used to it after a while. Then we have GTA. It's okay I guess, but I would much rather swap that out with my personal favorite PS1 game, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I don't feel it's right not to include that game because my god is it fantastic, and anyone who has not played it really should because it holds up so well, and I could definitely see myself playing it many, many years later. Well, then we have the fighting games. I think I would keep Tekken 3, but I would definitely swap out Battle Arena Toshinden for the Mortal Kombat trilogy. I mean, they released the trilogy on one disc, so there's really no good reason why they couldn't include it. Besides, Mortal Kombat is an iconic game. Most gamers know what Mortal Kombat is. I don't know one person who remembers Battle Arena. Who knows, maybe there is a huge fan base for that game in Japan or maybe even in the US, but I'm just not aware of it. The last game on this list is the only sports title, oddly, Cool Borders 2. It's a good game, and I do very much enjoy it, but why is Cool Borders on this list versus any of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games? The Pro Skater games on the PS1 were by far some of the best skateboarding games out there, and they still hold up very well even in 2018. Hell, I'd much rather play them than any of the more recent skateboarding games. They were so much fun, and it's like criminal that Sony did not include one of them on this console. Then again, I realize that Tony Hawk games are owned by Activision, so I'm sure Activision was being assholes about this whole thing and didn't want their games being on the console, which is a goddamn shame if you ask me. So that's all 20 games. There's so many other titles I would have loved to have seen here. I don't know. The whole thing confuses the hell out of me why Sony picked the games they picked. It's like they're so out of touch with their audience. I don't get it. I mean, both the Nintendo Classics had amazing games on them. Hell, even those shit Sega Genesis plug-and-play game consoles had a damn good game selection. It is what it is, though. There's really nothing we can do about it. Well, I guess that's not entirely true. I mean, I'm sure the PlayStation Classic is super easy to hack, so you could just put whatever you want on it. But even then, for $100, is it even worth it? I don't know, honestly. I'm a video game collector of nearly 2,000 games, most of which are for Sony game systems. I have absolutely no desire to buy the PlayStation Classic, unless it somehow drops to like $30, but let's be real here, that's probably never gonna happen. Anyway guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments on what you think of the PlayStation Classic. More importantly, I want to hear what you all think about the game selection. Are you happy with it? And if so, please tell me why. I really want to understand why you would be happy with this. If not, then tell me what games you would have liked to have seen instead. Thanks for watching everyone, and take care.
緊急事態緊急事態バババババババババあ、失礼いたしました。ちょっと昔の悪い癖が出てしまいまして。次に登場するのはエアコンバットです。迫力のあるドッグファイトお楽しみください。キーンバババ